Welcome to the Movie Spoiler Club, the channel where you can watch movie, television, and streaming series within minutes. Today we're going to spoil the movie The Tourist, 2010. This movie story plot is about, during an impromptu trip to Europe to mend a broken heart, math teacher Frank Tupelo, Johnny Depp, finds himself in an extraordinary situation when an alluring stranger, Elise, Angelina Jolie, places herself in his path. Their seemingly innocent flirtation turns into a dangerous game of cat and mouse, while various people who all think that Frank is Elise's thieving paramour Alexander Pierce try to capture the pair. It's midday in Paris. A surveillance van sits idle outside a chic hotel. The men are huddled together in the cramped van when they get word that the target is moving. From the front entrance emerges a tall and mysterious woman, dressed in beige with gold earrings and warm brunette hair that extends past the middle of her back. She walks confidently through the streets, and her heels click on the pavement with every step. As she walks, the van follows her every move. The woman turns into a cafe and sits at a corner table located outside. The waiter greets her promptly and she orders. There are two undercover police officers already at the cafe watching and waiting. A courier on a bicycle approaches. He has a parcel and he is looking for Miss Elise Ward. The hostess directs the young man to her table and she accepts the delivery. The men in the van are watching her closely with their surveillance camera to see what's going on. She opens the embossed envelope to reveal a letter with specific instructions of her next moves. Before catching the train, she must burn the letter. She turns to watch the street in front of her, almost certain she is being followed. She takes the candle from her table and begins to burn the letter. She leaves the smoldering flame on her plate and takes off. The undercover police officers try to grab the letter before it's unsalvageable. The letter is now burnt to ashes. The men are directed to gather what's left and return to their headquarters. Elise continues to walk toward the subway station. The van continues to follow her. Three men jump out of the van to follow her down to the platform, but she slips through the crowd and they lose her. Inspector Atchison retrieves the letter, and from the remnants will attempt to reassemble and decipher the letter. Once the pieces are scanned into the computer, they are able to see the contents of the letter and begin putting the puzzle together. Atchison needs to know where she is going in order to find Alexander Pierce, the person they are targeting. Time is ticking away as Elise puts more distance between their chase. Finally, the men find out which train she is boarding and when. The team heads to the train station. On the train, Elise is directed to pick her seat carefully. The letter explains that she must sit next to someone that looks like Alexander Pierce and convince police officers that the man is their target. She finds a young man with hair that hits his jawline in silky black waves. He is smoking a cigarette and reading a book at his table. She sits down after they make eye contact. The first thing he says is, "I'm sorry." She flashes a gentle smile and wonders out loud why. The man becomes uncomfortable and the two settle their gaze on the window beside their table. As they chat, Elise finds that the man she sits next to is Frank, and he doesn't really smoke cigarettes, just electric ones. The two go to have lunch together where they learn more about each other, or rather she learns more about Frank, who is a math teacher. Elise remains quite a mystery. The train calls for its last stop, and Frank reluctantly excuses himself to grab his luggage and prepare to leave. Elise excuses him politely, and she watches the horizon as he leaves. Elise is aware that she and Frank are being watched very carefully. When the train stops, there are Italian police officers already waiting at the station, confirmed that Frank is not Alexander Pierce. Atchison calls off the arrest of Frank. Elise makes her departure and quickly out of sight. Meanwhile, in a private plane, a short and scrunchy-faced man sits quietly on his seat. A mole inside Atchison's office phones in to tell the man that Elise has landed in Venice. The man informs the pilot that their plans have changed. When Frank gets off of the train, he wanders down the pedway and pulls out a map folded up in his arms. As he fumbles around with the floppy paper in his hands, Elise sails up in a boat and cheerfully calls out to him. He looks up puzzled to see the beautiful woman he had only met moments before. She asks if he would like to come with her, and as he processes her words, he agrees and climbs aboard. The boat arrives at a grand hotel. The bellhop grabs all the luggage and Elise checks the two of them in. Frank is surprised when Elise tells the concierge that Frank is her husband. The two are escorted to their luxurious suite. Frank is uncomfortable in the room, for it is far more exquisite than anything he could afford in America. As a math teacher, Elise encourages him to get comfortable as she steps into the bedroom. She opens the closet and her eyes light up with a rack full of elegant gowns and decadent jewels displayed perfectly in their place. While she admires her closet, Frank fumbles around with the balcony door. Once outside, he takes in the sights and sounds of Venice. In the evening, the two head to dinner. At dinner, Frank presses Elise for a little more information. He knows that she must be meeting someone significant. While she nods in agreement, She confesses that there is a part of her that hopes she won't be meeting anyone. Signs of a broken heart signal a new opportunity for love. When the two return to the suite, there is a gigantic bouquet of flowers and a letter. Elise has been invited to an exclusive formal ball. She sounds excited, then heads out to the balcony for some fresh air. On the boat floating in a canal, Elise can see a man spying on her. Frank goes out to meet her on the balcony, and that's when he asks if he can give her a compliment. She listens, and that's when he says, "You are the least down-to-earth person I have ever met." He barely gets the sentence out of his mouth before she grabs his face to kiss him. The man below gets photographs of the kiss. Afterward, she tells him that she is going to sleep, and that she hopes he will find the couch comfortable. Frank is once again puzzled. He was sure that they would have a proper sleepover in the same bed. Elise closes her bedroom door, leaving Frank out in the cold. As she begins to undress, she can't help but look behind her to see if Frank will ignore her directions. For a minute the door handle rotates, but Frank decides it is better to stay on the couch. Elise seems slightly disappointed. She dims the lights and drifts off to sleep. Frank finds his pajamas and grabs a blanket in one hand, and his book in the other finds his spot on the sofa. Frank wakes up and marches to the bedroom to find Elise in her robe messing with her hair. He takes her by the back of the head and kisses her deeply and passionately. Unfortunately for Frank, it was only a dream. Instead, he wakes up to room service he didn't order. Elise is already gone, and before she left, she made sure Frank would get a solid start to the day. The waiter leaves the room after delivering the food and heads down the hallway. As he leaves, two men pass him heading down to Elise's room. The two men sneak in the door before it closes and confront Frank. Unfortunately for Frank, these men are under the impression he is Alexander Pierce because so few people actually know what he looks like. When the men flash their guns, Frank locks himself in the bathroom and phones the front desk for help. The concierge is of no help, and his Spanish is of little use as well. The bounty hunters are breaking in through the door, forcing Frank to jump out the window. On the street, Elise is nearby and hears the sounds of gunshots. When she looks in that direction, she can see a man tiptoeing across the rooftop. She shouts after him, certain it's Frank. He looks to find her below, but can't stop long enough to respond. Frank is chased for a few blocks and eventually forced to leap off of her roof and onto a fruit stand tent. When his body rips through the canvas, he accidentally pushes a nearby officer into the canals of Venice. He is arrested for assaulting an officer. Frank is put into a holding cell after a brief interrogation. The officer doesn't quite believe his story but assures him the cell is only temporary. That night, the officer comes back and admits that his story checks out, and tonight he will help him escape. The two leave the precinct and sneak out onto a boat. They sail to a discreet location. The officer leaves Frank in the boat and meets some men that appear out of the shadows. While the officer is negotiating a deal, Elise is inching silently from behind. Once she is close enough, she tosses a rope to Frank. Frank ties the rope to the boat, and moments later Elise hits the gas and tows Frank behind her. The men from the shadows fire their guns but miss every one of their shots. The two boats are speeding down the Venice waters. One bounty hunter leaps onto Frank's boat and he has to defend himself while handcuffed. The man pulls out a knife and begins cutting into the rope that holds the two boats together. Elise reverses her boat and crashes into Frank's boat, throwing the bounty hunter off his balance. When Elise takes off again, she hangs the rope and Frank off the boat. Now Frank is being dragged through the water in handcuffs. She eventually stops the boat to pull Frank out of the canal. The two head for open water. Meanwhile, the man from the private plane looking for Alexander Pierce is getting his suit tailored. His name is Mr. Shaw. A sopping wet Goonie slinked into the fitting room to tell Mr. Shaw that they had the target in their sights but lost them. Mr. Shaw is more than disappointed and strangles the man with a measuring tape in front of everyone, including the tailor. Back on the water, Elise helps Frank get out of his handcuffs. Now she has no excuses left and has to explain to Frank what's going on. She explains that Alexander Pierce used to be Mr. Shaw's private banker and now he owes him millions. Frank is blinded by love and can only wonder if Elise could ever feel an ounce of that love for someone like him. She smiles at him warmly but never responds. She steers the boat to a dock. There, she asks Frank to tie the boat off. He gets out of the boat and she tosses his bag to him and says that she wishes they had met in another life as she sails away without him. At this moment, Frank realizes he loves Elise. Elise arrives at check-in, and when she offers her name, she is awarded clearance. The computer system identifies her as an agent. She hops off the boat and walks into the building. When she opens the door to the office, Inspector Atchison is there waiting. Elise is ready to give up and tell everyone where Alexander Pierce is. She confesses that she wants this to be over. Atchison is confused by her defeated attitude. then realizes that she is ready to move on because she has found a new love. Tonight is the formal ball and Elise will be wearing a wire. Tonight the game will end. At the ball, Elise shows up in a gauzy black gown and diamonds clenched around her neck. The camera pans overhead the crystal chandeliers and the string orchestra plays elegant music. Elise does a lap around the ball and has no idea that Frank is also there looking for her. Someone drops a letter nearby for her, signaling that Pierce is close and the man who drops the letter might be the one. She shouts after the man she suspects to be Pierce. The man ignores her calls. Elise tries to follow him but stops in her tracks when she sees Frank. The music shifts that the two are forced to dance. Frank tries to explain his feelings but Elise breaks his heart and leaves him alone on the dance floor. Frank tries to go after her but two agents intercept him to avoid distracting them to get to Alexander Pierce. Atchison and the team huddle together in a police boat and watch her on the camera. As Elise heads to the address indicated on the last letter with the key, she takes 2 steps inside and then the lights flicker on. Mr. Shaw and his goonies are behind her. He pushes past her and the guys grab her roughly. They begin to ask her where the safe is and she doesn't know. They threaten her and she doesn't budge. On the roof at a nearby building, the police snipers are waiting for permission from Atchison to take their shot. Frank asks them to step in, but Atchison denies his request. Things grow intense as patience thins. There is movement in the courtyard, and eyes are on Alexander Pierce scaling the fence along the terrace. Atchison makes a note of how similar the two actually are alike, but when he turns to look behind him, Frank has escaped from his handcuffs and he's the one scaling on the terrace. Mr. Shaw asks her one last time where the safe is, as he pulls her head back to expose her neck and the blade of his knife against her skin. She turns to look and says the safe is behind the marble wall. They reveal the safe and he orders her to unlock it. She doesn't know the code. Frank comes in halting the whole situation. He announces that he is Alexander Pierce but Elise argues that it's not true in an effort to save his life. Mr. Shaw doesn't care for the bickering and demands that Frank open the safe. Frank tries to open the safe but before he does, the chief inspector overrides the operation of waiting for Alexander Pierce to show up and gives the green light for the snipers to take their shot to save Elise and Frank. The snipers take everyone out except for Frank and Elise. Frank asks if she really loves him and she says yes, but she also really loves Pierce. The team enters the room and does a sweep of the area. Elise is terminated from the program for which she is thankful. The team runs off quickly because they receive word that Alexander Pierce is arrested only meters away from their current location. All alone, Frank opens the safe, revealing that he is Alexander Pierce, and he hires the man who left Elise the letter at the ball pretending to be him to walk around the city. The two now able to get away with all the problems, leaving one check inside worth £744 million. All the money Pierce owes the government and the police chief is happy with it enough to close this case. Alexander Pierce and Elise sail off into the morning breeze. Movie trivia. Do you know that Angelina Jolie admitted in an interview with Vogue magazine that the only reason she agreed to do this movie was because she knew it would be a quick shoot in Venice, Italy? This movie gets the movie rating of 6.0 from IMDb, Tomatometer rating of 20 and audience score of 42 from Rotten Tomatoes. Thank you for watching and be sure to hit like, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comment section, and hit the notification bell for the new movie spoiler video every week.